Last video was gorillas, this one is Arctic monkeys, so the next logical step from here is the monkeys. Swine! This is just ridiculous. No debut album has any right to be this good. Every single member works seamlessly in tandem with one another to create a sonic palette that is tighter than most bands could ever hope to achieve, let alone on their first LP. The speed and unapologetic raw energy brought to almost every song here shows no mercy and entices the listener from start to finish with every instantly anthemic chorus, catchy bass line and guitar riff. Need I even mention Matt Helder's drumming, or Alex Turner's lyrical prowess, which is unmatched here? His words are both conversational, poetic, and all-encompassing of youth culture in England, which serves as no surprise that this album took off in the way it did. Ranking the tracks on this thing was a genuine difficulty, as despite a majority of these songs drawing from the same box of tricks, Alex Turner's knack for melody and lyrical rhythmicity helps to distinguish each from the last, as well as the rest of the band taking the term power in simplicity and cranking it up to 11 with how creatively they punctuate each instrument's parts. A perfect album if there ever was one. This more laid-back and subdued take on the first album has its moments, but in my opinion doesn't come anywhere close to the dizzying heights of whatever people say I am. In no short part because Alex Turner's vocal flair is somewhat diminished in no time at all. He sounds bored half to death on some of these songs, which doesn't sell me on them in the least. Part of what I loved about the debut was that Alex really pushed his vocal range to its limits at times, which helped punctuate certain parts of a song that were either lyrically or instrumentally climactic in some way. And that unadulterated tenacity is almost completely absent, save for a few glorious moments like on Balaclava and 505, begging the question of why he didn't do it more often if he was perfectly capable, opting instead for middle-of-the-road basic-as-hell melodies which sit hollowly atop an instrumental which, at times, is equally as lacking. Seriously, do me a favour, and Old Yellow Bricks are so instrumentally dire that it makes me wonder whether a more energised approach to songwriting is not only preferable but necessary for these guys. I'm aware that when Whatever People Say I Am dropped, they hadn't long been playing their instruments, so is it their technical ability that's holding them back from texturising these slower tracks in a way that doesn't just sound like the first album at 0.5 speed, or is it just laziness? Now arises the point in Arctic Monkeys' career where it becomes less a band and more the Alex Turner show. Only here's the catch, Alex Turner has never sounded more castrated in his life. My point being, if you're going to lean on the melody to carry the song forward, then there must exist a melody to begin with. From Dangerous Animals through to Potion Approaching, brace yourself for the most abrasively ham-fisted combination of melody and rhythm on the part of Alex, who sounds as if he's playtesting his lyrics atop these instrumentals for the very first time with no plan in mind. For what it's worth, the production is pretty neat on this album, and I will grant it that the guitar playing is a welcome change of pace, aptly appeasing this new style they're chasing and weaving seamlessly into the soundscape, but it's still not enough, not to mention this album's violent misuse of what I'll dub the twist ending technique, a method adopted by the band a few times up to this point in their career, where they acknowledge the absence of excitement in a song, so for the final minute and a half decide to switch it up in such a way that is barely built up to and thus falls flat on its face. Fire and the Thud serves as the most offensive example here, whose so-called crescendo reads like an introverted quiet kid trying to shout as loud as they can. This album may be the most aggressively hit or miss so far. Where it hits for me is when the band takes a softer, more mellow approach, like on the title track and That's Where You're Wrong. Those songs adopt a style which on former Arctic Monkeys albums hadn't really clicked with me, but do here, on the account that a fine balance is struck between Alex and the rest of the band for a change, whose compositions have never spoken for themselves more so than here, at least since the debut album. The guitar and bass in particular serve as a lovely counterpoint to Alex's vocals which, as far as I'm concerned, are also an improvement. On the aforementioned tracks as well as Pile Driver Waltz and Black Treacle, he appears far less to be adopting his almost self-parodizing vocal persona that plagued Humbug and to a degree favourite Worst Nightmare, opting instead for a more naked and vulnerable approach which pays off nicely. However, where this album misses is during its heavier moments, which I should add is in quotation marks, because the flat production, amateur bordering on idiotic lyrics and abject complacency on the part of Mr. Turner do not complement this style at all. I'm looking at you brick by brick and don't sit down because I've moved your chair. Are these songs jokes? If so, then I guess that would explain their existence, but it sure as hell doesn't justify it. They're cliché at best and hard to listen to at worst. I totally understand why this album blew up in the way it did, but holy hell is it ever lacking in variety. An issue which could have been almost entirely solved were it not for the fact that all the songs here showboat the same few ideas sonically, and in particular adopt the same driving beat which by Matt Helder's standards is uncharacteristically uncreative. As is the case with the bass lines, a majority of which could be learnt at grade 1. A truth made particularly painstaking given how felt the bass was on Suck It and See. The want for songs to stick in people's minds via the chorus has never been more blatantly evidenced than on this album, and to give credit where it's due, that is pulled off for the most part and with great success. The verses, however, are a snooze fest and so full of dead space at times that you could probably run out the room midway through a line and come back before Alex starts singing again. Nonetheless, despite the production limiting a great deal of this album's rockier moments from soaring in the way I feel was intended, namely Are You Mine and Arabella, its purpose is seen through in that the choruses really do pop and stick with you for more than just a few standout tracks. So, fair play, I guess. The rhythm section could have done something interesting though. Let me first say, before I unveil my thoughts on this album, that I respect how much of an unapologetically inaccessible move this was, considering it follows AM, the band's most commercially successful album by far. However, despite its vast shift in song structure, instrumentation and lyrical themes, what holds it back in my opinion, and say it with me kids, is Alex Turner. This is an Arctic Monkeys album and I don't know why. In reality, it reads more like Alex's vanity project. There were even talks of him releasing it under his own name, which I dare say would have made a great deal more sense than this. But whatever, it's an Arctic Monkeys album. So why, when this album is so divinely textured with such interesting things going on, must Alex leave no room for the listener to enjoy any of it? He won't stop, he just keeps going and seems hell-bent on telling instead of showing, exemplified right out of the gate by Open a Star treatment, which is almost 6 minutes of incessant babbling by the man himself, who, by the way, is singing in almost the exact same style as the previous album. So there's not even a case for him switching things up, thus making it even that little bit more interesting. It's just more of the same, only less melodic, more pretentious and more in your face. This one annoys me especially considering what could have been. Oh well, hopefully the next album sees an improvement. A recurring trend with Arctic Monkeys is their tendency to establish an album's theme within one or two great tracks and then beat it into the ground with every subsequent middling variation on that one song, which brings little to nothing new to the table, as is the case here. There'd Better Be a Mirrorball is a beautiful opening track which had me genuinely excited to hear what was coming next, only for what came next to be the same song repackaged and resealed with complementary strings which, while admittedly pleasant, fail to mask whatever bland melody Alex inevitably comes out with, and God, I feel like a broken record now. I will grant him that his vocal takes aren't quite as unrelenting as the previous album, and in the case of the aforementioned opener, are used to great effect, but the fun more or less stops there. I Ain't Quite Where I Think I Am has got to be the most cut and dried David Bowie aping Alex has committed, and the following track, Sculptures of Anything Goes, while delivering something initially sinister and brooding, ultimately fizzles out with no real follow-up on what the first 2 minutes built up. In saying this, however, these tracks compared to how repetitive the entire rest of the album is, are a breath of fresh air by comparison for at least attempting something different, so they almost win by birthright. Alright, and now time for the ranking, coming at you in 3, 2, 1. Well, thanks for watching everyone. Feel free to let me know in the comments what you thought of this video as well as your own Arctic Monkeys rankings. I'm genuinely interested to hear what they are, and until next time, The Clash.